After conquering Sonic 1, I received plenty of comments regarding other classic games, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Sonic Mania. Challenge accepted. So we're here with Sonic 2. I have made it obvious in the past that I dislike this entry in the series because I'm very big on enemy placement, and around the halfway point, it gets very questionable. With Sonic 2, we have a new character with Miles Tails Prower, and the original idea was to go through the game as Sonic and then as him, but it seemed like I'd be repeating the same playthrough since there isn't much difference between the two with the exception of height. So one playthrough it is. We're going to go with the same rules as previous games, though I did have to make some adjustments to it. I'll get into that much later in the video. Rule number 1, I cannot defeat a Badnik, which means attacking it and releasing the animal inside. Rule number 2, I must fight the bosses to continue the game. So anytime I hear, it's go time. And number 3, if I defeat a Badnik, I must restart the level. So once again, I will be using the level select because there is no save feature in Sonic 2. Unless I play the mobile ports. The reason I'm doing that is because I would like to stick with the 4:3 aspect ratio. I think it'll give me a better challenge. So that's the reason why I go with the original releases rather than the 16:9 aspect ratio remaster. Now that the rules are set, let's begin. Oh, and by the way, I'm using Sonic and Tails. Let's go! Emerald Hill Zone Act 1 starts as a standard run, with the only challenge coming from these bridges with the 2 mashers on it. Thankfully, there are 2 ways to approach this. I can either walk between the enemies and wait for them to go under the bridge to walk to the other side, or I can make a really well-timed jump over both of them. Fortunately, I did both and realized that walking would actually be the safer choice, so Tails never has to jump. Bottom route helps out a lot, and Act 1 is over. There really isn't too much to this one. Act 2 is still the same, but since I can safely cross the bridge, I damage boost my way to keep Tails on the ground. Then I run headfirst into this coconut. Believe it or not, I run into this enemy projectiles in standard runs, so it feels normal to me. The lowest possible route is ideal until you get to this corkscrew bridge. You can just go forward and you'll be at the first boss encounter, 8 hits, and the boss is done. Chemical Plant Zone Act 1 doesn't have many enemies with the right path, so I just went forward, and then after this loop, I jumped over the red spring and came across these 2 moving blocks. I chose the damage boost through the spiny because Tails likes to jump at random points. After that, I carefully jump into the tube so I can get to the end of the level. Act 2 was more of the same. After running into 0 enemies and weird collision, I stopped myself on the slope to take the higher path. There's absolutely nothing here, so I went through the level normally. My plan is to take the secret route to avoid any more enemies. There, I grab the invincibility to cheese the Dr. Eggman fight, and die. One more try and the level is over. Thank goodness Tails didn't try to troll me. Aquatic Ruin is an interesting one. For most of Act 1, I chose to take the high route. I jumped over a grounder and had to damage boost through this group so I can get to the grounder and the 2 wisps. Not those wisps. Then, accidentally hit a Chop Chop. Okay, new plan. Take the middle route that leads to the top path and take an unnecessary damage boost. I made the choice to jump onto another platform, which will put me in a new plane. After a surprise from the grounder, it seems to have gone really far off screen because I saw it again and jumped over it. Then it's the last bit until the goalpost. Act 2. Yikes. So in the beginning, there are 2 options. Stay above the water or risk drowning. So I went for the top route. Not even 5 seconds in, and Tails hits an enemy. Tails off screen is more of a concern because he'll either spin dash or jump to catch up to Sonic. I managed to get Tails on the moving platform that I've been struggling to make progress with. I chose to drop to the lower route to avoid losing a life and having to start over. As I was about to drown, I accidentally hit a Chop Chop. At least Tails drowned. So I said screw it, took the bottom route, and let Tails drown again. He never returned, so I now have this somewhat easier time going through until I took damage. Then, the arrows happened. This is not going well. The next attempt was very promising. I had everything timed so well until the damn grounder makes a return. Let's quickly go through the rest of the attempts. I drowned, Tails quickly killed an enemy, and for good measure, killed the other one nearby. Tried the platforms at the beginning, was crushed. This. Then I finally got near the end of the level, only to get taken out by a wisp. Then I make it back only to get greedy and go for a life that I really didn't need. In hindsight, it made no sense. After all that, nearly an hour of trial and error, I made it to Dr. Eggman. Now that it's over, I never have to do this again. Casino Night Act 1 wasn't too bad. It was a bunch of bouncing around and only encountering 1 enemy. And I also had this one scary encounter. For the most part, I took the bottom route that led to moving higher. It seems like a lot of bouncing around and then the level is over. Act 2's beginning is designed so you never have to get close to the crawl. There is some platforming, followed by a risk. I take the speed shoes and make a few jumps a lot easier. Even when I come close to this enemy, there is still a safe way out of that area. After some interesting physics play and some more bouncing around, we get to Dr. Eggman. One fight later, Casino Night is done. It's the Starlight Zone of this run, it's that easy. Hilltop Zone Act 1 is one of those levels that I don't really see too many badniks. Aside from the beginning spiker, there isn't too much unless you stay close to the lava pits. Even in the cave, moving to a platform when the moving ones are close is a great idea. Near the end of it, Tails gets stuck on the spring that occupies him with trying to figure out what that is. The AI really isn't as smart as you think. One loop later, and Act 1 is done. Act 2 has me going through the top route, but then I made a mistake. Tails misses the platform, kills the Rexen, so now I have to start over. Now I take a lower route to make it through this loop. Instead of using the moving platforms, I chose to spin dash and jump over those gaps to make Tails avoid enemies. I got through the cave area with the earthquake and then made it to the second cave with no encounters. Funny thing is that when I try to get Tails out of the spring trap, it doesn't really matter because he's stuck. Then it dawned upon me that if he flies on screen, he really can't defeat an enemy or interact with anything. So I made a mental note to abuse this. After that cave, we're at Dr. Eggman. After some trolling from the AI, I redo the battle and the zone is over. Mystic Cave Zone is another area where you really need to keep an eye on Tails. If not, then you'll be restarting the level so many times, since there are enough branching paths that will cause him to jump off screen. So getting him to hang onto these vine-covered levers will help a lot. The interesting thing is the flashers. From my encounters with it, they will hit first if you go for an attack, so screwing up doesn't ruin the entire run. Anyways, I went up the higher route until it forced me to go lower beyond the moving boxes with the vine lever. At this door? Crusher? I'm going with Crusher. Oh well, I waited for the flasher to get out of the way to take the lower path, and then of the two paths I was able to choose from, I made the mistake of taking the top one, only for Tails to hit an enemy off screen. Went back and took the low path, hoping to not have Tails sent backwards with the red spring. I just walked off these crates, take damage, which is fine. Then I took a risk and completely ditched that annoying fox. Thinking that he will reappear and not interact with anything, I was right. I made the climb upwards, past the crush platforms, and managed to ditch Tails again. After that, Act 1 is done. Spoiler, this is reoccurring with Act 2. Act 2 starts with Tails getting stuck in this lever and going forward. I figured I can force him to respawn, but he returns. After these swinging platforms, I was forced to drop so that way I can keep an eye on someone. I bet you can't guess who. It was actually myself. So I screwed up trying to make this jump over a flasher. That's my B. Next attempt had me moving as fast as I can after I ditched Tails, and that was the whole run. Getting Tails stuck and going as far as I can, as fast as I can, worked really well, because I eventually made it to Eggman to finish Act 2. The levels that are taller are the ones to really worry about, but with that said, we're done here. To make it through Oil Ocean Act 1 means you'll be jumping over these octopuses throughout the beginning. Thankfully, you can land on the ledge and make the jumps over the individual ones. I swear, after that, I played my new favorite game in this run. How many times can I ditch Tails? He kept missing these rising platforms, so he's stuck again. Once he's gone, the speed really picks up. Thank goodness Tails jumped over these octopuses or I would have been livid. But one more later and the act is over. Not too bad, but there were some very close calls. Act 2 starts with me having to mess up this bridge part, thanks to the spring. To make matters worse, I fell into it, and what sucks is that I attempted to get back to the bridge, only to find that it's a solid platform, so... Attempt number 2. For whatever reason, I thought speeding through the level would be a good idea. It's working because Tails got sniped by an Aquas, allowing me to successfully ditch him. I wanted to mess around with the speed glitch, but I'm not really able to do much with it right now. I'm pretty sure with some practice I would have had it nailed down, but we need to keep going. After some damage boosting, there isn't too much to mention. After that, we're at the Eggman boss, so boring zone is done, let's move on to some garbage. I have quite the history with Metropolis Zone. I hate the zone, plain and simple. This is my least favorite zone in the entire series, so with that said, there are two enemies that will give me some grief. Shellcrackers, who will reach out to attack, and Slicers, who will throw these sights that will follow you for a short period of time. So the beginning of Act 1 isn't so bad. Just go forward, avoid the Asterons, even though I really want to call them Staryus. And the only thing that required a tight jump was the Shellcracker, but it is possible to completely avoid it and have him hit Tails in the process. Way to go. I took a lower route and was nearly crushed, but took the route until I came across the nut platforms. With Tails, these go by a lot faster, so he's finally useful. It took most of the game, but damn it, the kid helped. After that, I went up and dropped instead of running the nut down, and then after that, I just kept moving through the level with no real enemy encounters with the exception of this one Slicer, but damage boosting helps. And at last, the act is over. Act 2 starts with a short platforming section and then moves on with the Shellcracker. After the damage boost, we took a higher route where both sides have Slicers. I approached the one on the right only for Tails to hit the Shellcracker off screen. Second attempt and we go left and ascend as I ditched Tails thanks to one of the Asterons. Once I got to the Shellcracker, I was concerned that Tails was going to mess us up, or I was going to die. Sometime later, I damage boost every Slicer that I came across. Then I got this really close bumper section and the level was pretty much done. On to the nightmare. Metropolis Zone Act 3. Starts with Tails getting crushed. Good on you, Zone. I don't hate you as much. then some sweet looking maneuvering through the 2 exploding Asterons, and then a crush death. I don't get that. Now on to the real reason I call this the nightmare. The beginning heavily relies on Tails not hitting a single enemy off screen. Keeping an eye on the score is key, so I have to reset the level each time I see it go up by 100. Anyways, I went to the area that I was crushed and hit the spring and made another mistake at the slicer. I didn't wait for Tails to return to me, so when I passed it, he jumped at the bumper, hitting the slicer in the process. Then I thought about taking the lower route, and actually no, the beginning really sucks. There are these 2 slicers, so either Tails is going to hit something or you're going to die. So I said screw that, ditched Tails, and sped past the shell cracker, and it worked. I took the highest possible route and made it to a slicer. I tried making it up the yellow bumper wall and screwed up. Tails goes for the kill. I hate this yellow rat. I spent the next few attempts trying to set up Tails to get crushed so I can just go through the areas without him. I eventually got by the opening and then screwed up landing on this platform that caused me to drop down to the area full of nut platforms. So I said screw that, plunged right into the spikes. It leads to this ramp that has a shell cracker at the very top. This is a tough one to line up so I don't kill it. On my second attempt, out of sheer dumb luck, Tails despawns. I return to the slicer with more confidence because I can't screw up as long as Tails doesn't touch the ground. Then I jump on the small blocks, jump on top of these gears, narrowly avoided the shell cracker. But you know what happens when you aren't prepared for an upside down slicer? Yeah, all that work for nothing. So I went back to the route that led to the shell cracker at the end of the ramp, and I was just hanging around in that area and messing about, and then I did this. So I forced Sonic to clip through the floor and ended up in the same spot. After the 4th time, I noticed that it despawned the shell cracker, which is exactly what I needed. I did not intend on doing that, I was just goofing off, but hey, it worked, so it seemed like nothing could ruin this, what I'm calling the luck run. Even the upside down slicer can suck the bolts behind the other one. One Tails punishment later, and the level is over. I'm gonna be honest, it didn't feel like a triumphant victory, but more of a sigh of relief. But we're finally done here. Sky Chase Zone is a bit of a drag, but has one huge upside. Tails is no longer with Sonic for the rest of the game. And I'm going to be honest, his removal from this adventure has never made me so happy. Oh, right, let's talk about the rest of the level. Since it's just a wave of Badniks, all I could do is walk around to avoid what I can. I noticed with the nebulas that I must run to the other side of them the moment I see them. Some of them descend, which I can avoid and have no problems with, no matter how long it take. But the ones that ascend will be an issue, so I have to get past them as fast as I can. Oh, and also avoid the Balkan ride that caught me off guard. One more attempt later, and the level is over. This was the least stressful because damage boosting is such a reliable strategy. And now we are on Winged Fortress. Since I'm not allowed to hit these cluckers, I can't really take a shortcut, so that's our only true enemy. That and my lack of experience with this platforming section, it still throws me off most of the time. I can't really see where to grab on so I don't miss, so I end up falling through. Avoid the turret, avoid these 2 dumb clucks, and then I make it to the top of the airship, grab the speed shoes, and I hit this clucking enemy because I chose to lean. By the way, all of this is unnecessary, and you'll see why in attempt number 2. So I went through the intended path until I got to the end of the moving platforms near this propeller. Here's what you do. Damage boost through the propeller to make it to the descending and then disappearing platforms, and this cuts the level in half. Thank you, speedrunners. So then I do some vertical platforming, grab onto the crane, get flung to the right, and make it to the boss. That's right, this route will only have you encounter one enemy. With this boss fight, instead of fighting Eggman directly, we need to take care of this giant FU laser. It's funny because the small spiked platforms are the real threat. With that boss defeated, we're at the home stretch, it's on to the Death Egg. So this is where I was conflicted, and I want to take a moment to address something. There are a few issues with naming this video series. For starters, the term Badnik was only used for the North American and European manuals for classic Sonic games. That one was on me for not researching it and kind of going off my own knowledge, because with the release of Sonic Adventure, the term was dropped only to be used 2 more times. So with that said, once I get past the classic Sonic games, I will be changing the video titles to reflect this change. And on a side note, according to Sonic Retro, Sonic 2 never really mentions the term Badnik, so again, that's on me. Now to address the real elephant in the room, Mecha Sonic, or Silver Sonic. Since a Badnik is an enemy created by Dr. Robotnik, defeating him would end the run one boss away from the end. I was very confused because I was supposed to fight the bosses, but the majority of the fights were against Eggman rather than his robots. So I left it to a poll and got some responses that were really interesting, and it also brought out something that I really should have researched a bit more. So for the 1.4 thousand people who voted, I apologize, that's my fault. But I want to thank you all for voting and leaving your input. This is how it goes down. The properties of a Badnik are enemies that can be defeated in one hit and drops an animal, plant, or something else. On top of that, my definition for defeating a Badnik in the Sonic 1 video still exists. So, technically, not just by my rules, but according to Sonic Retro, Mecha Sonic does not count as a Badnik. He's technically a boss. This is why I had to change the rules in the beginning of the video. I hope this clears most, if not all, the confusion that some of you will probably have. Anyways, let's get back to the game. There isn't much left to the run. Mecha Sonic is easy to take care of with a charged spin attack, 4 hits, move out of the way, and then you can get the last 4 by jumping into him if you're lucky. I still can't do that, so I did what I could. After that, I decided to guarantee my victory and took the intended method to fighting the Death Egg robot. After a 4-minute fight, the boss is down and the run is over. So, is it possible to beat Sonic 2 without defeating a Badnik and babysitting Tails? The answer is yes. Believe it or not, but without Tails, this run could be a lot easier than the no Badnik run in Sonic 1, due to Tails being the biggest challenge. Now, I know I had to adjust the rules for the game, but I had my reasons. On top of that, I am aware that Dr. Eggman is not the only boss in games like Sonic 3 Knuckles and Sonic Mania. To those I pissed off with the rule change, sorry, but the run used a term that is not used worldwide, so I had to make the appropriate changes. I hope you understand. So that's the run. I was not sure if this could be done, but it's possible. I also assumed that there was going to be a real dead end, but it just took a little bit of time to keep Tails in check. So if you don't hate the challenge, or me at this point, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll come back with the series with Sonic CD. I'm aware I'm doing this out of order, but I can't ignore it. If you like the video, give it a like. If you like the video and you want to see more content I make, join the Knux Club by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon to get notifications for new content. At this time, I want to give a huge shout out to the members of Knux Club Plus, the channel members who are going above and beyond to help out the channel. The members are Jaded Indolent, Kenneth Gutierrez, Mega Trafficone, and Tactical Discord. If you want to help out the channel even more, you can join with the YouTube gaming link down below. You can get some perks like the shout out at the end of each video, emotes for streams and premieres, and an exclusive chat on my Discord server. If you want to help out the channel and get something cool to wear, get the Knux Club's Hot Take shirt with the Teespring link down below. Follow my social medias, which are also linked down below, and with that said, I hope you have a wonderful and safe day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. I return to the slicer with more confidence because I can screw. What? What is up with my script? I need to proofread this thing. I need to not write scripts at 1 in the morning.
Let's take a dive in aquatic mine. Once was a cold pit, but now it's a water ride. Makes you wanna sit back, enjoy